Let's look at every major thing that has been added to New World since launch. Now it's going to be only the major things, because if I did everything it'd just be like me reading patch notes for 3 weeks and that's pretty boring. So let's jump in. It seems like forever ago, but one of the first things that was added was the Void Gauntlet. This is a hybrid weapon that utilizes intelligence and focus, because you can heal with it and do void damage. The next thing is that we also got visibility of the high watermark gear score system, which was rebranded as Expertise. And with this system, we also had the introduction of Gypsum. Gypsum is basically a way of consistently getting up your expertise via doing all different types of content. For example, if you do an outpost rush, you will get a type of gypsum. You can then convert that gypsum into a specific gypsum cast, say for your chest, and that will then give you an expertise bump. So instead of doing chest runs all the time, you could now do all of the content and still progress through the game. It was a very important system introduction to New World. They also introduced a way of leveling your professions after you hit max level. This was called the Aptitude System. Basically, each subsequent level was split into 3, and at each little notch you got a little reward. These also give you gypsum as well. And then the next major thing was the Expedition Mutators. Now this basically utilized the existing expeditions but added a different kind of spice to them, and the way they did that was with 10 difficulty levels. So you would have the normal expedition, and then you would be going up through the levels 1 to 10 in the mutations. Now each level of mutation would maybe be a little bit different from the previous, but they also would require a higher gear score. So with this change, your max gear score went from 600 to 625, and to get from 600 to 625 we had Umbral Shards. These Umbral Shards mainly came from the new Expedition mutations, but they also came from the Gypsum cast if you were Expertise 600. And with these Umbral Shards, you would then upgrade your gear from anything from 590 plus could be upgraded to 625. This change basically impacted the end game in a massive way, because your PvE content now had a lot more variety. Initially, the mutations were Genesis, Lazarus, and Dynasty Shipyard, but this has now been expanded. A subtle change that was actually quite important was the change to dodging. Basically, instead of your dodge sort of feeling like it was a little bit stuttery, in that at the end of your dodge you sort of came to a stop, they made it so that your dodge was free flowing. You would dodge and you would keep going at the same speed, kind of thing. It seems weird to add that to this list, but it was actually quite game changing at the time. Another game changing thing that might seem small on the surface was the change to Azoth travel cost. So you can travel around the map to any shrine and town, and it used to be that the cost would take into consideration how far it was and how full you were equipment wise. So if you were carrying a lot of stuff, it would be more expensive, and if you were going very far, it would also be more expensive. They basically completely changed that. Now every trip is capped off at 20 Azoth. It used to be that you'd be paying like 250 plus to go from place to place if you were full, but now it's no more than 20. There is now a proper combat indicator, so you can actually tell when you are in and out of combat. This change also led to the introduction of being able to open your inventory whilst running, which it was a little bit weird that you couldn't do that. And your health now automatically regenerates when out of combat. You no longer just have to eat food to get any kind of regen. A new mid-range weapon was introduced with the addition of the blunderbuss. This sort of looks quite similar to a pistol. It scales primarily off strength, but the secondary was intelligence. But this was the first range weapon to use strength, so you see a lot of bruisers using this one, for example. A new expedition was added with the Tempest Heart update. This was an endgame expedition that required a roundabout gear score 570 just to do the normal expedition, whereas Genesis and Lazarus generally you only need 500 plus. This expedition actually concluded the story of Isabella, and there was actually a cutscene at the end of this expedition. And of course, with this expedition we also had a mutated version of it and new loot and all that kind of good stuff. I think at this point it also became that the depths became a mutated version, so there was now quite a few endgame expeditions if that was your thing. Later still, we then had the introduction of PvP arenas. Now these are only 3 versus 3 at the moment, but these are queuable in a similar way to Outpost Rush, and of course you can play solo or you can join a team and queue that way. The PvP arenas now also give a specific type of gypsum, which you can either use to get a cast, or it looks like they're going to be important with the ultimate abilities in the next patch, which we're not really talking about here. With the PvP arenas though, we also got the PvP reward track. Now effectively this is sort of like a pathway that you have like 3 steps per level, and at each step you might get a reward. Well, you'll get 3 rewards and you'll have to pick which one you want. The rewards are sort of random though, but basically it was a way of doing PvP and getting good PvP rewards, as opposed to random Outpost Rush chests and that kind of stuff. This really enabled PvP gamers to just do PvP and progress at the end game. More recently, we have had the Barnacles and Black Powder expedition being added. This also has a mutated version, and one that came a little bit out of the blue, we also had the new music profession. This is basically, you can think of this as like Guitar Hero or Rock Band, and it will give you minor buffs if you complete the songs very well. And then there were some big changes to how you find groups with the group finder. This system basically is like a lobby version of finding groups. Effectively, if you wanted to do, say, a mutated version 10 of Lazarus, you have to click Lazarus, click the view expedition button or view group button, and then while you're there, you can either search for lobbies that already exist, or you can create your own lobby and people will sign up. When you're happy with your team, you then enter the expedition and you play as such. This makes finding a group as a casual or pretty much anybody a little bit easier, and also reduces the amount of spam in the chat box. And a very, very important change that a lot of people have been complaining about for a while, expedition orbs were finally removed. So these were the keys that you needed to get into expeditions. They finally got rid of those and you could now freely enter them. Yes, they are actually capped, so you can only do 15 normal expeditions a day, and I think it's 20 mutated expeditions a week. But for most people, like 95% of people, you're not going to run into that cap. Now, there's probably quite a few things that have been added that were important that I've not mentioned here, but I just wanted to keep this to sort of like the main things that have actually been added or changed. One example that springs to mind that I'm not really talking about was wars. And when the defender was changed from being able to spawn at A, B, and C, they were only now able to spawn at the fort, making wars a little bit easier for the attacker. There's loads of things like that, but overall I think the game has come a long way since launch, and that's really the point of this video. And I would recommend anybody giving it a try. A lot of the reasons that people were unhappy at the start of the game have been fixed. Let me know your thoughts. Did I miss anything obvious? I tried to be as comprehensive as possible, but it was actually proving a little bit more difficult than I expected. Have a most beautiful day. Like and subscribe. Goodbye.